sometimes I think our Zimbabwean friends will believe that the ngozi thing, which is wronged spirits, it's a difficult part of the culture where people really believe that these avenging spirits are dangerous and you can't talk to them. They want a virgin girl to be sent to a wronged family, and that's that. Then they had to work around that, the elders, to say, since now it's law that the girls should not be sent to a wronged family because as a prize, so how do we go about it? Then it was like, who talks to the dead person now who wishes his spirit to be avenged? Then they asked each other, in the first place, how did we know that this spirit wants to be avenged by a virgin girl? Then they said, okay, it came from, we consulted a traditional healer or a spirit medium. Then they decided to go through the same channel to speak to their dead relative, to say, we cannot send a girl, but we can have another head of cattle to represent the girl, so that when that wronged family wants to have someone wants to marry, then they can look for their own sweethearts and we pay with the extra head of cattle. Then this problem is solved. That is what is happening in our area.
But we also even heard from the women about the increased acceptance and demand for condom use, reported by at least 40% of the women and the local partners who distribute condoms. According to one woman, she said, the fact that we have attended the same course and dialogues with my husband and were given the same information has made it easy to discuss sex and negotiate condoms at home. When we looked at the issue of communication around sexuality, one of the nurses at the Seke Rural Clinic said to us, she had lived in this community and worked in this area for 30 years. She described how she had recently sat in on a workshop discussing the use of condoms as part of the support group service offered, and was amazed at how freely the women talked about sex. One implementer noted just the dialogue in itself is a success because it was a move towards openness in communication. On the issue of access to information, a beneficiary, an unmarried female youth in Seke, explained how the Cultural Dialogue series had provided women and men with the same education on HIV/AIDS, and said this had given her confidence to insist on safer sexual practices with her partner. She indicated, before I did not want to say yes, but I had to because I did not have knowledge. Now I know I have rights. I know what is safe. I can say no if I want, said the young girl. On changing cultural practices, over and above the scenario that she described, we also saw, when talking to traditional healers, they started saying, we do not want to hurt anyone. We know we cannot cure HIV. We cannot cheat about this as it is obvious. Now, instead of suggesting an afflicted man sleep with a virgin, we tell him he must go to the clinic to get ARVs. And this was really a huge step, because we had struggled with traditional healers who would tell people to go and sleep with a virgin in order for them to have their HIV/AIDS cleansed. On the issue of wife inheritance and small houses and polygamy, this practice was discussed a lot during the dialogues, and the women indicated that they did not want to be inherited. The men during the discussion stood up, and the custodian saying, this is our culture, this is our practice, and we will not stop wife inheritance. So in the end, there was some kind of compromise that, okay, if we cannot stop, can we at least go for testing before the inheritance process it takes place? But the issue of force was also discussed, and it was eventually agreed that women should not be forced. They must be given an opportunity to choose and look at the benefits of either being inherited or not being inherited. The major disadvantage is if you are not inherited in that community and your husband dies when you are young, it's quite difficult for you to then bring a boyfriend into the homestead of, for example, in my case, the Chingandus. If Chingandu died, it would be difficult for me to bring in a new boyfriend. So people look at those things. So sometimes you would then be forced to move from that marital home to go back to your home in order for you to start a new life. And if you have invested so much in, you have a home, you have your cows, your children, some women do make a choice to say, maybe it's better for me to remarry in the same family. We were also really, because we during the time we supported the traditional leadership to also support women who make choices that are not normally standard choices as known by the community. And when we were doing the evaluation, we were excited when this woman said, I was married to a man who everyone knew had many other partners. When he went away to work for a time, I knew he would not be faithful. So when he returned home, I told him he must use a condom, but he refused. I went to the headman and told him my problem. The headman agreed with me and spoke to my husband, asking him to use a condom. My husband refused, and in the end, I had to divorce him, and the headman agreed. My husband has since died, so if I had stayed with him, I would also be dead. So the fact that she could go to the community leader was such an important point. And the fact that the community leader could support as a result of the training and the discussions that we had had, it really gave this woman comfort to take a very difficult decision, because this kind of a decision in the community is not an easy one. It's almost acceptable for the husband to divorce the wife, but not the other way around. For you to be known to have divorced your husband, it's really taboo. So at the end, this program was measured against the SADC criteria for best practice, and the project scored high in all the following areas: that it had been really effective in changing practice, it had used ethical soundness because it was based on respecting of people's cultures and using the community structures. It was cost effectiveness. There is very little money that goes into this methodology. You saw people sit under a tree. There is no flip chart. There are no overhead projectors. There are no loudspeakers. We just sit and talk, even with 1,000 people. I don't know how people hear each other, but they do somehow. And all we do is to provide the meals and the transport for the people to come. Replicability, this is very easy to replicate because the Southern African countries are very similar in terms of context. And we have since replicated, we are replicating this in 9 countries and tracking to see how it is working. Innovativeness, it qualified because it was really new. Directly trying to address cultural practices without coming in to blame, without saying we want to take out these negative cultures, was very innovative. And sustainability, the culture change agents that are in place, Mrs. Sekete, that you know, is never going to go anywhere unless she's dead. So as long as she's in that community, she will continue to give the education. We were also strongly supported by the Member of Parliament and the senators of that area. They came to the dialogues and also spoke, including the Minister of Health, to reinforce that the messages that we were giving were correct. So all that has really helped the program to become sustainable. Some of the collective lessons important for us is that do not give up too soon in the face of resistance. You start with a bit of resistance, but you must keep going, particularly when you are dealing with culture. Community engagement in culture and gender programs is critical to generating solutions that fit. So you don't go in with the solution, you start and work upwards until you have a solution. The project must aim to break down negative stereotypes of men and women through collective deliberations. So it's not taking women alone who come back and start saying to men, I know I have my rights, I know what you are doing is wrong. It is sitting together, men and women, and exploring a particular stereotype until everybody agrees that, yes, I think there's something wrong with that. And because of that approach, we did actually address issues of women's rights in this communication, in this program, without necessarily calling them rights. Engagement of women leaders and church leaders and traditional leaders was critical, and role models were important. And gender change can be a slow process, but it is possible.